Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope all my wellness warriors are doing fabulous today. Let me see. Oh, there I am. Always have to fix the lighting after I get on. I almost said lightning. I hope you're having a fabulous Wednesday. I cannot believe that June is almost over. By the time I talk to you again, it will be July. Holy Hannah. Anyway, if you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, jazzerciser, line dancer, runner, studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, and a wellness advocate, because I have spent my life from early childhood dealing with depression and anxiety, which I didn't know what it was until I was in my 20s. And I have found that in my journey toward recovery, and I always say recovery, not recovered, because it's easy to slip backwards. In my journey, what helps the most is sharing with each other, kind of like Nami's premise of pure wisdom, because sometimes what works for one of us will work for somebody else or won't. But a lot of times, little tips and tricks along the way can make a huge difference in our journey. So if you have followed me before, or if you are following me regularly, I hope you enjoyed last week's video on narcissistic personality disorder. And I hope you enjoyed the whole mini series on misunderstood mental health conditions. If you are a regular follower of mine, you know that I consider wellness to be a huge umbrella of topics. It's not a one size fits all yoga pose, y'all. It's messy and it's personal and it's way more than smoothies and steps. Wellness often ends up meaning that we're digging into mindset. It's not just about, it's definitely about physical lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, all those other things, but it's often more about mindset, and that's usually where we end up. So in light of that, I've had requests to circle back to a topic that's definitely worth putting on repeat. And then although I mention it regularly in my Wellness Wednesday videos when it's appropriate, I don't always do a hard dig. And the last time that I did a hard dig was in 2023, when I did Silencing Your Inner Critic, and a little bit more recently when I talked about imposter syndrome. But this is definitely a concept that needs to be revisited regularly, and that's how we talk to ourselves. That's negative self-talk. It's super important, and it's basically like, even if everything looks like a well-oiled machine on the outside, and I've used this analogy with an event that I ran, or that I used to run, even if everything looks like a well-oiled machine on the outside, sometimes the best way to put it, and the way that I used to describe it in analogy to this event, was if there's backbiting and internal conflict, sooner or later that's going to implode and it's going to bleed into the outside, and people are going to see it. Because the stories we tell ourselves are the stories that shape everything we do. So you can call it whatever you want to. You can call it your inner critic. You can call it your inner mean girl, your snarky narrator. When I saw the term in my poking around in my research to update this topic, I saw a reference to the snarky narrator, which made me think of Scrubs. Which is, if you haven't seen it, it was a fantastic half-hour comedy that was on for a long time. And for a while there, I used to be able to find reruns every time I changed the channel. I had friends that were like, oh my gosh, this is always on. And it's because every hour on the hour, I could find it on a different station. And I've seen it so many times, like Golden Girls, that when I put it on in the background, I already know what's happening. I don't actually have to look at the TV. But we all have an inner monologue. If you're familiar with Scrubs, the main character is JD, and a lot of the episodes are his inner monologue going on in his head. We all have that inner monologue. Some of us have it a little stronger than others, to the point where we're talking to ourselves on a regular basis. Hi, it's me, I'm the problem. But that's what it reminds me of. And we all have this inner monologue going on in our heads. And that inner monologue is often reasoning things out in the background, reprocessing information. But a lot of times it's shaping our thoughts for the day, because that inner monologue primarily is either negative or positive. And if it's negative, it's putting a negative slant on everything we encounter for the entire day. And if it's positive, it's doing the opposite. So who is that inner monologue? It's the voice in your head. And I forgot to say, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, drop a comment, ask a question, whatever. If I don't respond while I'm on, it's because Facebook didn't show me all the things today, which is sometimes the case, and I will respond afterwards. So who is this inner critic or this inner mean girl or the snarky narrator or whoever it is? It is the voice in your head that pipes up whenever you're trying something new, whenever you decide it's going to be a good day, whenever you're dreaming big, whenever you're feeling vulnerable, whenever you're nervous about something. It's that inner voice that pipes up, and it's basically your brain trying to protect you. We've talked about this before. It keeps us in our comfort zone because that's where it's safe. And sometimes the comfort zone is not as safe as we think it is. In fact, oftentimes the most toxic relationships we can find ourselves in are the ones with ourselves. And those are what set the tone for the rest of our relationships and the rest of our interactions and just how we approach every single day. So it's that silly brain that's trying to protect us. And it says that we're not good enough. And it often says that we're going to fail and that everyone's going to see it and going to make fun of us and judge us. And it says things like, who do you think you are? And other people are better at this. And you don't deserve X, fill in the blank. It also can say you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too dumb, etc. Good morning, Miss Christie. I have experienced this a lot personally. And my voice has gotten my inner critic, my inner, what's the other word? Judgy McNitpick was another one that I picked up on. My inner critic is much better than she used to be. However, I still find myself slipping a lot because that negative thought loop becomes a pattern. It becomes a habit. And so when we're out of our positive routine, even if we've been trying to reshape it and reframe it for years, sometimes, and again, why I say I'm in recovery, not recovered from anxiety and depression, sometimes in the throes of stress or when we're out of our routine or whatever, we automatically revert. I have a friend that used to work for law enforcement that used to refer to it as reverting to training. We revert to what we know best and what we are instinctively wired, how we are instinctively wired to respond. And when I say instinctively wired, I don't mean that's the way we were born. I mean, that's what we developed as a coping mechanism. Whatever our automatic go-to coping mechanism was, that's what we revert to in times of stress, in times of confusion. So I never saw this in myself, but I had past relationships where the person I was in a relationship with, good morning, Miss Danielle, where the person I was in a relationship with would actually get very upset with me because I was notorious for tearing myself down in the mirror. And I've been that way since I was quite young, actually, since I was probably young teens. And I've talked a little bit about this before, about a little bit of disordered eating I was experiencing, and my fears of getting fat. And because I was bullied and I was picked on in grade school, probably the earliest I can remember is 3rd or 4th grade, and I was repeatedly told I was ugly, and I was repeatedly comparing myself to others that everybody didn't think were ugly. And this goes back way before I was old enough to where I should have been concerned about this, which is an indicator of some hereditary wiring, if you will. So there was a predisposition there already, along with some adverse events that kind of led to this. But I was overtly preoccupied with how I looked. I didn't feel like I looked the same as everybody else. I got picked on. I was called ugly. When I was on the playground, I would come around the corner and the boys playing on the sand hill or whatever it was, the playground would all say, "It knows where you are." And it was how they referred to me. And let me just tell you how gratifying it is to be able to tell you that without losing my noodle, because that means I've progressed in the healing department and that I can talk about it, because I never used to be able to. So again, this inner critic has been loud and proud for years. And I can remember in these past relationships where my significant others would get very angry with me because I would stand in the mirror and I would tear myself apart. I would not like the way my hair looked. I would not like the way my clothes looked. There were times where I was 99 pounds, 98 pounds, and couldn't have been fat if my life depended on it, and still thought I was fat. There was a very dysmorphic thinking there, and what I saw in the mirror was not the same as what everybody else saw. And it's easy to revert back to these things when you're feeling less than, when you're feeling nervous, when you're feeling out of your comfort zone. But when I really got a chance, there were 2 times that I really got a chance to see it kind of in full force, where it kind of got my brain moving in a different direction. And the first time was actually with my daughter. She was 4 years old. She was in the back seat of the car. We were on our way to daycare, and she was putting her hair up in this bun, and she was ripping it back out. She was 4, y'all, 4. And she's putting it back up in a bun and ripping it back out. And I'm watching her in the rearview mirror as I'm driving, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I can't get my hair right. Was this something that should have been coming out of the mouth of a 4-year-old? No. So in that moment, I realized that 2 things were happening. That first of all, because she had grown up completely different than me, that while I didn't think there was any reason that there should have been learned behavior, it was evident there that there was some kind of a familial predisposition. And I had kind of known this for years, but kept kind of shoving it to the back of my mind. And then the other thing I realized that was that whether I knew it or not, she was watching me and she was emulating what she was seeing, because where else would she have learned that type of behavior? So the second time that it really, really started to get my wheels, and it still took me years after that to realize, but I did start slowly being more mindful of how I reacted to things and how I conducted myself when I thought she was watching. But there were also times where she was watching that I didn't realize that she was picking up on things. So it still took me years to make forward movement in this department. This is just where the wheels started turning. And then the other story I've told, if you've followed me for a long time, you've heard this story. Again, I'll just say repetitiveness and practice makes perfect. So the more you hear it, if it's something you're struggling with, there may be that number 8001 time that you hear it and it clicks because you're ready to hear it. So the real reality for me was the day that I was fitting a customer for activewear. I have an online activewear boutique. And I had gone for a customer fitting to help them figure out sizing. And this customer was beautiful. She was absolutely beautiful. I want to say she was about 10 years older than me. And I kept thinking, gosh, I hope I can be in this good a shape in 10 years. So another picture of what comparison looks like. Sometimes we think that we are falling apart, that we are visibly falling apart, that the outward appearance is just something that people are judging. And in the meantime, what other people may be thinking is, gosh, I wish I could be like that, or gosh, I wish I could look like that, or whatever. And a lot of times, unfortunately, with women, all of this negative thinking is tied in with how we look, because our culture has taught us that how we look is what determines whether or not we're good enough, right? How we look, how things fit, all of those things. So I'm fitting this customer, and she was absolutely beautiful. There were a lot of health problems in her family. She was obviously stressed out. She was trying things on. And what happened was it was a prize winner that had won kind of a shopping spree in my boutique. And so she did not have a lot of extra money to spend. So she was super excited at the prospect of getting new clothes, and she was trying things on. And she was really excited about how they would look when she held them up. And then she would put them on in the mirror, and she would just start tearing herself down. And I mean, all kinds of cuss words and, oh, I'm so, you know what, fat, and all of these things. And I was horrified, and I was trying so hard to kind of keep a straight face. I was horrified. And in that moment, I realized this is what the people in my previous relationships had been seeing in me. It was literally like looking in a mirror, but watching the mirror image kind of just take on a life of its own. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I looked like. And this is what it felt like for people who loved me to watch me do it. It was horrifying. It broke my heart. And that's what'll get me going. So, I apologize if I start getting a little shaky here. But she was just tearing herself down in the mirror. And can I just tell you, she looked so amazing in clothes that fit, that she was excited about, but she could not see it. She was, I've got to work out more. I'm falling apart. I'm getting old. This is flappy. This is fat. And it just, sometimes we have to see somebody else do it before we realize the damage we're doing. And just in that moment, that's when, and at that point, and again, sometimes it has to be on repeat for it to sink in. In that moment of my life, I was starting to build some confidence and I was starting to feel better about myself. But in that moment, witnessing what was unfolding in front of me, I realized that I had to stop talking to myself that way. And at that point, I had gotten better, but it was still taking a lot of practice. And in that moment, watching her look at herself in the mirror and tear herself apart, just piece by piece, just shredding herself, I realized that I needed to continue working hard on changing the way I looked at myself and the way I talked about myself, because I didn't even know her until that day. And it was heartbreaking. It tore me up watching her tear herself up. So again, our brains try to protect us. Our brains revert to training. We revert to what's comfortable. And a lot of times that looks like a very toxic relationship with ourselves. And that thought process is what leads us to toxic relationships with others, whether it's friends, family members, romantic relationships. It leads us to toxic relationships to others. It leads us to a toxic way of interacting with the world in general, with events that happen in our lives. Because when we're already tearing ourselves down, it's easy to turn all of that around and use it as fuel against ourselves. Okay? I hope that's making sense. So why does it matter? It matters because it's a loop. And sometimes we don't even realize it's literally spinning like a broken record in the backs of our minds. And it makes us doubt everything we are and everything we do. It shrinks our confidence. It derails our goals. It zaps our creativity, and it keeps us stuck. I say I'm in recovery. I get on here on Wellness Wednesday. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I in recovery versus recovered? Abso-freaking-lutely. Why? Because if I'm having a bad day, if I feel guilty because I haven't completed something I feel like I should have completed, if I feel like I'm not pulling my weight in the world, or whatever situation comes up, or feeling guilty because, like I said, because I didn't accomplish something, or I'm maybe not feeling so good and I haven't worked out in a couple days, so now I'm feeling physically weak. In those moments, that thought spin, that record starts playing, and it starts playing on repeat now. And now it becomes a situation where everything I'm looking at and everything I'm doing, I'm not good at it. And what was I thinking? And why would people want to listen to me? And it's happened before with Wellness Wednesday. And that's why you've heard me talk about how there's many of you that are on here all the time when I'm live, and I appreciate every single one of you. And I hope that every time I speak, it's doing something for you. But I also deeply appreciate when people approach me that I had no idea were watching or listening. And they're like, I was listening to your Wellness Wednesday last week and you said this and this and this. And I'm like, I didn't even know you watched. And that is amazing, because on a regular basis, I'm like, I don't know if anybody wants to hear about this. I don't know if this is a good topic for today. I don't know why I'm doing this. What makes me think people would want to? So that's the old imposter syndrome. That's the old negative thought loop. That's like, maybe you're not really comfortable going live. Maybe you should just not do it today. And that occurs daily for most people in relationship to something. Oh, you're going to the gym. You're starting to get in shape, but nobody else has noticed. So maybe you shouldn't bother anymore. Does that sound familiar? I've been eating really good for a couple of weeks and I think I'm starting to feel better, but nobody else has said anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and have a cheat day and just blow it out of the water and consume like 6,000 calories. These are the things, this is that brain spin that keeps us stuck and that pulls us backwards when we're starting to make progress. So it's time to give that voice in our heads, that inner critic, or inner mean girl, boy, whatever the situation may be with you, because whether you believe it or not, men actually experience this quite a bit. It's just significantly underreported. In this respect, they're not wired that much differently, but the thought process may sound a little different. It may sound like, this is really bothering me, but I can't say anything about it because I'm a guy and I'm not supposed to have feelings. Sound familiar? So if I have men listening, keep going, because this applies to you too, and I see you. I know that just because you're that big, strong man doesn't mean that you're infallible, and it doesn't mean you're not human, and it doesn't mean you don't experience these negative thought loops. Like, I can't do this. I'm so sick. I feel so bad, but I got to go to work because I'm the breadwinner, and I got to provide, and I gotta. And any of us can get into this I gotta thought loop when we are failing to take care of ourselves, or recognize when we need a rest, or we just need a little bit of restoration. So we got to give that voice in our head a makeover, or at least give it a solid set of boundaries, right? So this is where I like to use the phrase, we got to name the baby. And I thought this was ingenious idea. So, even though I've talked about negative self-talk before, I've talked about the imposter syndrome. This was a new idea for me when I did a little bit of research to kind of update the topic for today. The school of thought here is that if you name the baby, if you name that inner critic, you can separate it from your true self, and it makes a big difference. So, some of the names that came up were Judgy McNitpick, Bob, whatever. Brene Brown, who is a well-known motivational speaker, she calls those negative thoughts in her head the gremlins, her brain gremlins. When you refer to that voice, not someone, when you refer to that voice as something other than you, it kind of helps to separate it and take away its power. And that actually makes a lot of sense to me. And then the other thing that came up was, just like you gave Judgy McNitpick a name, same schools of thought, actually support referring to yourself in third person, he, she, Donna, Danielle, Christy, whatever, referring to that yourself in third person. So like when you're doing things like affirmations, or you're just telling yourself, I'm okay, I can do this. If you refer to yourself as he, she, Donna, whatever, it can actually help you to take a step back and think about what you're looking at more objectively, which kind of made me giggle, because recently I discovered that an acquaintance / friend of mine that I hadn't spent a lot of time with, I got the opportunity to spend time with them during an event recently, and I found them routinely referring, we'll just say the name was Sally. And I found them, the name is not Sally, but we're just going to say that. I found that in conversation, they were frequently referring to, well, Sally did this and Sally thinks that. And I thought it was just cracking me up. I thought it was hilarious. But in this context, where it's suggested that we refer to ourselves in third person to keep ourselves more objective, I was like, this is genius. This is absolutely genius. And maybe Sally knew what the heck she was doing, right? So, that's the first thing we have to do. We have to give the baby a name. So whatever this negative thought loop is, whatever you think is appropriate. And a lot of times people use, popular women's names to, denote negative stuff like Karen, Brenda. Come up with something that kind of makes you giggle. That's my recommendation. Because I like Judgy McNitpick, or Bob, or Gremlins. Come up with a name that, maybe a fictional character on a TV show or in a movie that annoys you. Something that, so either something that makes you giggle or something that annoys you, so that you can separate that inner voice from yourself. Because as we've talked about before, not everything you think is true. Okay. So that's the first thing. And then consider maybe referring to yourself in third person, I know a lot of people are like, isn't that how you get diagnosed with things, Donna? No, it's not. And a lot more people talk to themselves than what you would think. And there's actually research that shows that the people that talk to themselves more are actually highly intelligent, which means I must be a genius because I talk to myself all the time. Okay, so anyway, so name the baby. Separate that negative thought loop from your true self. And because it's hopefully going to take away its power. That's the school of thought behind that. And then even when you are talking to yourself in the mirror, refer to yourself in third person. And I do find, like when I'm running and I'm doing things that are really, really physically hard at jazzercise, that when I say to myself, Donna, you've got this. Donna, you can do this. I feel like it does give more oomph than I can do this. I've got this, if that makes sense. All right. So next, we got to reframe the question. And what I mean by that, and I actually have an article here from Healthline that kind of helps with some examples here. So reframe the question, or reframe it, not reframe the question, reframe it or question it. What are the thoughts going on in your head? And especially if they're negative thoughts, there are some really good questions that you can ask. Is it true? Is it helpful? Would I say this to a friend or a loved one? Would I say this to my child? And where is the evidence? So in this Healthline article about self-talk, which I can drop the link in the comments when we're done, here are some questions that you can ask yourself about some of the thoughts listed. So am I overreacting? Is this really that big of a deal? Is this important in the long run? Those are great questions. So if you're worrying about something and you've got something on a negative thought spin in your head, sometimes I like to start with the present moment. Like, is this going to impact me right now? Or is this distracting me from what I need to be focusing on? That's a question I often ask myself because I can be a squirrel and I can be like, oh, I need to do this and oh, I need to do that. And, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, looks shiny. But then I've gotten really good at Donna. And I guess I'm referring to myself in third person more than I thought. Because I'm like, Donna, you got to focus. This is what you're supposed to be doing right now. Good morning, Miss Dawn. So am I overreacting? Is it really that big of a deal? Is it that important in the long run? Am I overgeneralizing? Am I coming to a conclusion based more on opinion or experience as opposed to facts? Like, and that goes back to the, is this true? Is this not true? Am I labeling myself harshly? Am I being harsh? So if like sometimes I'm like, Donna, you're an idiot. And I'm kind of joking because it'll be some stupid mistake I've made and I know better, but is that really the best way to speak to myself? Maybe not. So if you're referring to yourself using words like stupid, idiot, hopeless, fat, things like that, these are not things you would say to a loved one. These are not things you would say to a child. So should you be saying them to yourself? No. Absolutely not. And I'm trying to keep it together here because this, for those of you that have followed me for a while, this is where you know I start getting a little bit emotional. Is this an all or nothing thought? Am I viewing one incident as either good or bad without considering that the reality is almost never black and white? Almost never. It's almost never black and white, y'all. The answer usually lies in a gray area somewhere. And how truthful and accurate is this thought? Like, and especially if you can refer to yourself in the third person, that gives you an opportunity, what they're describing, or if you're referring to Judgy McNitpick in your head, where you can step back and, is this really true? Is this really what's happening? How accurate is this? Okay. So first we have to reframe. And then you notice I said, what is the evidence? And what that means is, whatever you're thinking about yourself, do you have proof of that or do you have proof of the opposite? And this comes into play a lot with imposter syndrome where you're doing something that you're really good at that you've been doing for years and you're humming along. And then all of a sudden, yes, Danielle, I can't see your whole comment, so I'll have to look at it afterwards. But yes, you're picking up what I'm putting down. So you're humming along, you're doing stuff that you've always been good at, and then all of a sudden you're like, what am I doing? I can't do this. And you're starting to panic. So what is the evidence? And all of a sudden you're like, okay, why am I doing this? Am I crazy? what, nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to think this is a good idea. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to screw this up. You know, I ran events over and over. You know, they grew a little bit each year. I ran them over and over again, 4 or 5 of them once a year. And every time I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to just ruin this. Where's the evidence? What is the actual evidence? So you have to look at the evidence. Is the evidence what you're thinking, that you're going to screw it up? Or is the evidence that you've done this before, you've done something similar, and you rocked it, and you're going to slay it this time too? What is the actual evidence that either supports or denies whatever the thoughts that are going through in your head? So instead of I'm terrible at this, you might say I'm still learning and growth takes time. Or, okay, instead of, oh, I made this mistake and it's going to ruin everything. Well, I made this mistake, but I learned from it. And how can I improve it or move forward with it? There's lots of different ways to reframe things. So let's talk about some ways that we can start that process. Okay, we already talked about naming the baby. We already talked about referring to ourselves in the third person, whether we're telling ourselves good things or bad things. And we're talking about reframing. So how do we begin to do that? We begin to do that. And y'all, I know I'm going to run a little bit long today, but this is a really super important topic. So affirmations. Affirmations can be anything. They can be anything. But let's face it, not all of us are going to come out of the gate with I'm a goddess and actually believe it when we say it, right? So according to Healthline, again, where is it at? Where is it at? I have a couple of different links here, and this was actually in a Psychology Today article, but I don't think I have that one pulled up. Let me look at my notes. So according to Healthline, oh, I know where it is. I know where this article is. This was in a Country Living article. Okay, so according to Healthline, let me repeat that one more time. And I lost my spot again. Where am I? All right. Regular repetition. Sorry, guys. I just had all the birds blew out of my tree. Regular repetition of affirming statements about yourself can encourage your brain to take them as fact. Now, I've talked about this before too. There was a girl that was on TikTok that started to go live every day to talk about how she was beautiful and why she was beautiful, kind of as a joke. Because people were like, well, if you tell yourself this, you'll start to believe it. She didn't believe that was true. So she started this as a joke. And what she found out after several months of this was it was actually working. She was starting to think more positively about herself. And we've talked about this before. So here's an example. Again, you're not going to probably go out of the gate and get online and be like, I'm a goddess, and actually believe it. So this is not something you're likely, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to go stand in front of the mirror and be like, I'm a goddess, I'm a goddess, I'm a goddess, and repeat it 10 times and keep a straight face. It's just not going to happen. But here's some positive affirmations you can try from this article in Country Living that also refers to Healthline. This feeling isn't permanent. I'm safe. Nothing is going to happen. These are for anxiety. I am calm. I am in control. Affirmations for self-esteem. I am intelligent. I am kind, and I am loved. Today, I will be the best version of myself. Now, again, this other school of thought says Donna will be the best version of herself today. Today, Danielle matters and has value. So this is another way to do it because it just kind of puts things in a little bit different perspective. Or for Dawn is another day closer to achieving her goal instead of I am another day closer to achieving my goal. Or for Christy, Christy is proud of her ability to commit to a goal instead of I am proud of my ability to commit to a goal. So different schools of thought, whatever works for you, whatever's working for you when you're standing in front of the mirror or when you're chanting that little mantra in your head that's kind of pulling you through. So I'll drop the link to that article in the comments so that you can review because there's like 40 affirmations for different things. They're kind of divided up into like 10 for each of 4 different topics. And I think you'll find it really helpful. I know I did. So we already talked about, just like you gave Judgy a name, maybe refer to yourself in the third person, like I just did, start a proof list. This is another way that you can start to reframe this. Start a proof list. Every time, listen, we all have these silly phones that are basically like a pocket computer. And I don't know about Android. I'm sure they have a notes feature. iPhone definitely has a notes feature. Start a proof list. Every time you succeed at something or overcome something, put it down. Write it down. Put it in a note. Write it down in a journal. Make a record of it somewhere. Make a record of it somewhere so that you can go back to it. That's your evidence list. That's your exhibits A through Z. When you start to doubt yourself and you have to get into that debate with the brain gremlins, you can be like, oh, no, this is not true. And here's why. Because I did this and I did this and I did this and I slayed this and I knocked this out of the park. That's why you write it down. So you start your own proof list, your evidence list of what you're good at, what you succeeded at, and what you did. Maybe it's what you did to make other people feel good, whatever. Start that proof list, and every time you succeed at something or overcome something, write it down. It could be a whiteboard on your wall. You could turn your wall, paint it with chalkboard paint, and start that list right on your wall. Whatever works for you, write it down. Just like there's proof behind writing down your goals, helping them become more real, writing down what you've succeeded at or what you've overcome is going to help reframe that negative thought loop. Surround yourself with people who build you up, who speak life into you, not fear, and who clap when you try, not just when you win. Because it's important to celebrate every step along the way. Every time you make a better choice, it's important to celebrate yourself. And yes, a proof list, Carla, exactly. I'm glad you love that idea. Surround yourself with people that support you and that want to see you do better. And I've told these stories before too. I won't get into it about how a lot of what affected my mental thought process change from negative to positive was actually becoming friends with someone who was literally positive all the time. And I'm not talking toxic positivity. I'm talking about even when she was telling me about a story that made her angry, about something that made her angry, she was still smiling. She was still giving the benefit of the doubt. Some people look at that as you have rose-colored glasses on and it's a problem. And other people like me, and I so much needed that at that time of my life, is like, I want to be like this person. I want to spend more time with this person. And the more I did, you've heard this story if you followed me for a while, the more I did, the more positive I became and the less tolerance I had for negativity around me. And that's when my relationship started to change, because when you start to move in a positive direction and you start to reframe that brain loop, the people that are right for you will come along, and then the other people that don't know how to handle that more positive side, they're gonna just kind of disappear into the sunset. So surround yourself with people who build you up, who speak life into you, not fear, who say, that sounds like a great idea. How can I help you do that? Or what do you need to do that? Instead of, what are you thinking? You can't do that. Nobody's going to pay any attention. Nobody's going to listen. Are you crazy? Which one is better? Which one would you use if you were trying to build up a loved one? Okay, I know I need to wrap this up. So technology. Technology can be it can be very dangerous tool. I watched a video. I don't know if it was true or not. I don't know if it was AI or not. I take all of this stuff with a grain of salt. But the concept behind it was mind altering. The concept, basically what the story boiled down to, is that we are losing our lives to screens. And I know that sounds ironic when you're sitting here watching me talk on a screen and you're on the screen watching it. But this is helpful. This isn't doomsday scrolling and comparing ourselves to others in a negative way, or digesting a bunch of political information that's all negative no matter what side it's coming from. This is learning. This is positive. So there is a place for technology. Even though it can be dangerous, it can be an excellent tool. There is a place for technology. There are some suggestions out there that if you have ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT to affirm you. And I haven't messed with it a whole lot. I know there was a thing going around where people were using ChatGPT to roast them. which is, you know, kind of making fun of them, but in a funny manner. And I did have ChatGPT do that for me, and it was hilarious. Here's what I noticed was that even though I didn't tell it to, the end of the roast was very positive. And that's what roasts are supposed to be. They're supposed to be funny. They kind of pick fun, but at the end, they're positive. So ChatGPT did its job. Would I use AI for that purpose on a regular basis? Probably not. Because I'm still a little fun. I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I basically use it as a search engine on steroids. I have ChatGPT. I basically use it as a search engine on steroids. But I'm very careful with it still. And if there's something that doesn't sit right with me, I go look it up for myself. But there is a place for it. And some people are using that to positively affirm them. Use caution. That's all I have to say about that. However, there are also journal and affirmation apps out there that range from free to subscription services that can give you a daily information. There's email lists that can send you a daily affirmation. There are some free apps out there. They may have ads. Some of them may not have accessibility to all the features unless you pay for it, but there are some good ones. The AI overview, so we're back to AI, on Google, I asked for the top free affirmations apps with no subscription. And the ones that came up were Think Up, Unique Daily Affirmations, I Am Daily Affirmations, and Inner Tune, and Miracle Daily Affirmations for Women. There are also journal apps. We've talked about these before. If you need a place to jot down, but you want a password protected or you don't want everybody to see it, there are journal apps out there too. Or you could just break out a notebook and write it down yourself and stick it in a drawer. I don't know. But if you're writing affirmations, chances are you don't really feel the need to hide them. And I have, as a matter of fact, I have a notebook. This is my goals, gratitudes, and affirmations notebook. And this is where I write them down. And when I fill it up, I start a new one. So writing down things is important, especially when it's positive things, because those are things you can go back and reflect on. And when you write them down and you focus on them, you meditate on them, whether that's just thinking and reprocessing or actually sitting down in lotus pose, these are the things that can change the way you look at yourself and subsequently the way you look at other people and the way you look at everything else. A lot of people like to isolate. I like to isolate. I find isolation to a degree to be very affirming. Spending time with myself, learning about myself, and just kind of shutting out the outside noise. However, be careful with that because Judgy McNitpick or Bob or the Gremlins or whatever, they feed on that. All right. And then, of course, as always, gratitude, baby. I don't talk about this often enough. This is my gratitude jar. I keep a pad of paper next to it every single day, no matter what the day looks like. Well, okay, not every single day because I'm human, but most days, no matter what the day looks like, I sit down and I write one good thing. A lot of times it's in the morning the next day. I write down one good thing that happened that day and I put it on a piece of paper and I fold it up and I put it in this box. Gratitude. And especially if it's gratitude, it's just like writing down the things that you were successful at. If you slayed something and it went well, write it down, put it in your gratitude box. Read it at the beginning of each year, dump it out, read all the things, put them away, start over. All right, so I'm running long today, but again, this is so super important. So here's some reminders. Remember the little engine that could? You know, if you remember that book, I know I'm showing my age here, but if you remember that book, or you've heard of that book, and you understand the concept of it, drop a comment for me. Basically, the little engine that could did what nobody else thought he could do because he kept saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Now, in a perfect world, this would be, I know I can, I know I can. And I do this a lot of times when I'm out for a run. It looks like one of two things. It's either one more minute, one more mile, one more whatever, or I do it a little differently and I'm giving thanks for it and I finish a minute interval or a 2-minute interval or whatever I'm doing that day. And I say, praise you, Lord, may I have another. So again, the little engine that could, gratitude. See how that works? So in honor of the little engine that could concept, remember this great quote from Henry Ford, whether you think you can or can't, you are right. You decide which it's going to be. What we focus on is what we will see. We've talked about this many, many times. It's like the red car phenomenon. If we're looking for good, if we're looking for positive, if we're focused on positive, that's what we're going to see. We should have a gratitude jar for everyone in the house. That's an amazing idea, Danielle. Especially since you have teenagers. Oh my gosh. That's just, ooh, I'm excited. I want to go out and buy them for you. So, where was I? What we focus on is what we will see. I was focused on gratitude boxes. What we focus on is what we will see. It works on us and it works on everything else. There's an overlap there. The more we focus on the good things about ourselves, the more it's going to change the way we view the weather in the morning, what we notice when we walk outside, what we notice when we go to work, what we notice when we're driving down the road. So what we focus on is what we get. And finally, well, not finally, 2 more points. Think about the person you love the most. And I'm going to try not to get emotional about this. Think about the person you love the most. Your mom, your child, your spouse, etc. Insert that person's name here. How would you speak to them if you were trying to encourage them? Told you, I'm trying. How would you speak to them if you were trying to encourage them? Because if that's not how you're speaking to yourself, you definitely need to do some reframing, okay? You should never, ever, ever say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to the person that you love the most. And I'm not talking about the sarcastic jabs back and forth because that's what keeps things playful. I'm not. Yes, Christy, that's awesome. I love that. Do not speak to yourself in a way that you would not speak to the person that you love the most, because this is the most, for some people, the most important relationship you have, and for others, the second most important relationship you have is the one you have with that inner voice, with Judgy McNitpick, third person reference, he, she, Donna, Christy, Danielle, Dawn, Carla. Do not ever speak to that person in a way that you would not speak to the person you love the most, because it's really important and it has a profound impact on everything you do and how you interact with everything around you. Okay? And for those who believe in a creator, and I know that not all of my followers have the same beliefs as me. For those who believe in a creator, this is my final thought. How do you think that creator sees you? That was a big pill for me to swallow, because I do believe in God. And when I realized that God wouldn't make a mistake and that God loved me even when I made mistakes, and I had to learn how to start seeing myself that way. So if you do believe in a creator, whoever that creator is, take some time and sit down and think about what how that creator sees you. Because that's how you should be seeing yourself. All right. I know this ran long today. I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry, because this is important information, and I'm so glad that I was asked to revisit this topic. Let's change. Let's give that voice a makeover. Let's name the baby, give it some boundaries, and start working on reframing that thought loop. I hope you have found this helpful. If you have, or if you think someone else will, please share. Next week, we're going to touch a little bit on grief. I am not a grief counselor, so it's going to be kind of an overview, kind of a light touch. But I think it'll be helpful for some people. And if some people need more, then I have some places that I can refer you to on that topic. In the meantime, again, if you found this helpful or you think someone else will, please share. And I will see you next week. And in the meantime, be well.